Good morning. So you've heard from Rachel and Sarah about the findings of the Posture Positive survey. And I realise it can be really hard when we hear yet another report about how difficult things are. We've probably all heard many such a report in our careers as practitioners or our role as parents. And I completely understand how that might feel quite hopeless and trigger a sense of helplessness about how we can change things for the better. So what I want to talk to you about briefly now is the now what. What do we do next? How do we make sure these findings don't just slip into being another report on the pile of endless reports about how awful life is for disabled people and their families? How do we affect positive change going forward together? Firstly, let me say, I think this is everyone's responsibility. And I realise that might cause some of you parents out there to feel frustrated, another thing to do, another battle to face. I empathise entirely. As the parent of a child with complex needs, my life is far too full of stressful things. Thank you very much. I do not need anything added to my to-do list. I totally hear you. For professionals, there's probably an equivalent response. You find yourselves having to work in strange new ways in a strange new world during a most unforeseen and challenging scenario. Although on the upside, I'm sure we all have found new appreciation for being able to wear nothing but pants on our bottom halves for the majority of the working day. Everyone has shown incredible resilience, and that's really what I want to focus on in relation to next steps, building resilience together. It can be really easy to think about resilience as this within-person superpower, and the problem with that narrative is that it can become very isolating very quickly. If resilience is all about individually digging deep and toughing it out, you really quickly get too tired and too burnt out. In this framing of resilience, we can feel as though the system is too big and too challenging. It's overwhelming to think about how on earth we can begin to change things when we're barely treading water ourselves. It can feel as though nothing is within our locus of control because we're doing everything just to get through the day. And the system over there is something way beyond ourselves, something fixed and rigid that we end up in a futile battle with because it feels like there's nothing within our control to change. We also know from psychology that when we feel out of control and hopeless, we learn to be helpless. People don't change things when they feel hopeless and helpless. We get stuck in this cycle. We know too that when we feel isolated, we lack that sense of belonging that's so important for us as humans. Maslow suggested belonging was a basic human need, and without it, we can't do that higher order stuff of thinking about change. So what can we do? Let's start to think about resilience as less of a within-person superpower and more of a systemic endeavour. Because when we think about it that way, as something that makes whole systems bounce backable in the face of challenge, then we start to realise we are not on our own. We need to shift from seeing ourselves as out there and separate from the fixed and rigid system to part of the system, part of something which is fluid and dynamic, which together becomes a living, creative collective capable of finding ways forward and affecting positive change. When we see ourselves as part of the system, rather than banging up against a fixed and rigid thing that's over there and outside of us, we recognise our locus of control, realise our agency as parents and professionals, and can start to work together for solutions. The Posture Positive report recognises the challenges of postural care that both families and professionals have faced during lockdown. Some of this is difficult to manage, but the resilience and creativity of people over the last few months is both inspiring and challenging. For the system to change, we all have to recognise, parents and professionals, that we are part of it, that we have a level of agency and control, and that we can affect positive change when we start to view ourselves as part of that bigger collective.